What up, everybody? It's Chris Roscoe with Operation Moksha, and today, talking about integrating betrayal. Because I posted about this the other day, and somebody on my Facebook wall was like, okay, can you talk about how shadow work will help dealing with betrayal, and how can you integrate an experience like that? And I think that's a really fucking valuable conversation and a question to be asking, so I want to actually go into that today. Because since I started down this integration path, I hadn't really considered integrating betrayal because I hadn't really experienced it. But I had experienced a betrayal recently that had me really reconsider how to actually integrate it on a fundamental level. And I think I've come up with some really valuable stuff that I want to share with you. So the very first thing ever when integrating anything is to feel all the feelings and think all the thoughts. And now this could potentially take a long time because when it comes to betrayal, I find that there's a lot more that comes up than just one fucking experience. Like if you've been betrayed, likely it will bring up all the resolved issues from all the times in the past that you have been betrayed. And so it's generally not just one thing. And so feeling all the feelings and thinking all the thoughts and sifting through what this experience was actually like for you could actually take some time. And it's tremendously important to go at your own pace and take space if absolutely necessary. Like if somebody is wanting to mend things with you at a pace that is quicker than you're actually able to mend things and reconnect, do not, under any circumstances, overwrite your pace, because basically what you're doing is taking all the emotions and all the triggers and all the things that you could have learned from, and you're glazing over them so that you don't actually address them, and you're choosing to connect from an unstable place. And that's actually inviting more betrayal into you, because you're not looking at whatever it was in you that invited the thing to happen in the first place, which takes me to my second point. You weren't to blame, but you might have been at least partially responsible. And there's a distinction here between blame and responsibility that I want to be absolutely fucking clear about. Because when I experienced this betrayal recently, I don't hold that it was my fault. I don't hold that I was to blame for this. I didn't fucking do the thing. Me and this person knew exactly what was expected of us. I engaged in ways that were in line with my commitments. The other person did not. It was a very clear thing that I didn't do anything wrong. However, with that in mind, I can take responsibility for the fact that my expectations could have been clearer. The consequences for breaking these agreements could have been clearer. And I wasn't really owning in my space and in my presence how important this was to me and what the consequences to fucking with me are, and that generally I'm just not somebody to be fucked with. This is really difficult. It's a difficult concept to grasp when you look at things from a moralistic perspective. But I want to encourage you to not look at this from a moralistic perspective and instead look at it from an energetic perspective, as in like energies and things like that. There is a story my friend tells about being on a beach in another country and being attacked by a pack of wild dogs. And he's with someone that he cares about and is intending to protect. And this pack of wild dogs comes up, and he's like, oh, fuck, we could die right now. And so he tries to like puff himself up and make himself look all super tough. But the dogs function on an instinctual, energetic level. And so when you try to fake that type of thing, the dogs knew, and they didn't take him seriously. So he said, okay, I need to switch my game plan up here. And he found the alpha, and he looked the alpha dead in the eyes, and he said, even if the rest of these fuckers tear me apart, you're dead. And he said in that moment, something really important happened. He scared the alpha, and then the rest of the alphas the rest of the dogs felt it as well, and then they all got lost. And so there's a lot of arguments about whether or not alphas exist in the wolf communities of dogs or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this instinctual thing that lets people around you know very clearly that fucking with you is not worth the effort. Some people just have this and some people don't. And this is different between blame. I'm not blaming you for these things, but there is something that happens on an energetic and instinctual level where if you don't have something in you that says don't fuck with me or else there's consequences, people who thrive off that, and people who want to take advantage and people who have predatory mindsets will be able to tell that you do not have defenses put up against the types of fuckery that they would like to engage with you in. They do this feeling thing where it's like, is there an opening for my fuckery? And yes, if there is an opening, they'll take it. And the thing about it is, if you're unaware of the parts of your personality that could easily be susceptible to these types of things, then you won't be able to identify the people who are coming in to your life with those kinds of intentions. So the boundaries both serve as a protective mechanism to make sure that people know not to fuck with you, but they're also an early warning system where if you feel somebody pushing against them, you know to be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? This is like a wall you're not supposed to cross. Why are you attempting to? And so this is why responsibility is important, is that if you're someone, like, you know when you look at somebody and you know not to fuck with them. There's just some people you know not to fuck with. And that is because they have this thing instilled in them. So if you're one of these people that doesn't, likely it has to do with your relationship to conflict. Likely it has something to do with your relationship to rejection, or your relationship to abandonment, or your relationship to safety, or something like that. If you're unable to communicate that you shouldn't be fucked with, you're likely shying away from conflict for one reason or another. And so the thing to be integrated there is your ability to get into conflict if necessary to protect yourself. It doesn't mean you lead with like a confrontational, aggressive mentality. It's just there's something in your being that people can know and pick up on an instinctual level that says, if I push this motherfucker too hard, I'm going to regret it. So maybe I shouldn't. Be one of the people that has that, because you don't want to be one of the people that doesn't. And also, even good people, you can train good people to not really care about you. If you treat yourself as somebody who doesn't need to be cared about, and you treat yourself as somebody who doesn't have boundaries, and you treat yourself as somebody who can just get stepped on over and over and over again without any consequences, people will come to see you that way, and they might not even know that they're taking advantage of your lack of boundaries because they don't even know that there were boundaries there in the first place because you didn't set them. And they might not know that underneath the surface, you're fucking furious at the fact that you're feeling walked on if you don't communicate that. So you could even invite good people into kind of an abusive dynamic if you don't properly explain to them how they need to be engaging with you. And if you have this instinctive thing, you will just tell people by the way that you present yourself how to engage with you and what ways are not acceptable to engage with you in. So that's one of the very first things I wanted to talk about. So in order to really learn the lesson, you have to take a look at these things and you have to say, all right, what part of me wasn't holding my boundaries enough to where this person just knew not to fuck with me? Or what part of me wasn't willing to see the red flags that said this person isn't trustworthy? And what red flags can I look out for now that I wasn't aware of before? And what openings in my boundaries and my value systems and my protective mechanisms, what openings, unconscious openings were there that I can now begin to patch up consciously and choose the best ways to protect myself? And this is where you start to face whatever had you create these openings in the first place. Because like I said, more often than not, if you have a breach in your defense system, it's likely due to fear of conflict or rejection or abandonment, or you probably don't want people to think that you're bad or selfish or all these sorts of things. But that will create these openings, as we've discussed already. So if you want to go from somebody who gets taken advantage of or gets betrayed or gets these sort of things, and you want to actually repair it on a fundamental level, you have to be able to communicate to yourself and to the world around you that you're willing to get rejected, that you're willing to get into conflict, you're willing to be abandoned and all those sorts of things by people who can't respect these things, which is the absolute, possibly the most important distinction of this entire thing. The only people you're going to lose by becoming this type of person who has solid fucking boundaries and communicates that you're not to be fucked with are the people that are not okay with that. And those are good people to lose. Those are good people in your life to lose. If you start repairing the breaches in your boundary system and start taking better care of yourself and people get a problem with that, then fucking good. They're revealing to themselves that they were emotionally dependent on your lack of defenses and your lack of boundaries and your lack of self-care, in which case they are outing themselves as people that you are fucking better off without. Goodbye. Just fuck the whole thing. Better to not have it. Now, if you want to begin to forgive the person who betrayed you, Two things to say here. For me, forgiveness is a given. Forgiveness is just saying, I don't want to suffer over this anymore, and so I'm choosing not to hate you about this, and I'm choosing to not resent you over this, because I know that hating you and resenting you would do little more than just cause psychological problems for me. Like that Buddhist quote that holding on to resentment is like swallowing poison in hopes that the other person will die. Me staying mad at you and me hating you and telling you that you're unforgivable and all that sort of shit isn't going to do me any good. It's not the best way to protect myself against other people that were like you, and it's not the best way to create internal harmony and wholeness within myself. The best way to do that is to say, I forgive you, meaning I'm choosing to not hate you anymore, and I'm choosing to not hold resentment against you because I value my peace more than I do attempting to like punish you or teach you a lesson that you're not likely to learn just through me hating you in the first place. But then this is where a lot of people get mixed up when it comes to forgiveness. They think forgiveness means it's okay, do it again. This is fine. I don't mind. Everything's okay. But there's a distinction between saying I'm choosing to not hurt you, or I'm choosing to not hurt myself through holding hatred and resentment. There's that. But then being able to say I trust you again and I'm open to you again is a very different thing. I've forgiven people that I want nothing to do with. I've forgiven people that I never, ever, ever, ever want to see again. And people who very clearly know that they don't have like permission to be in my life, I've still forgiven them. That's very fucking different. But if you want to try and repair a relationship with somebody who's broken trust with you, that's a little bit more of a delicate process. It's more than just forgiving and saying I'm not going to choose to suffer anymore over this. It's saying that I've looked in myself and I've addressed whatever invited this kind of behavior in the first place, and I've patched it up to where I trust that I will not be repeating a pattern by allowing you back into my life. I trust that I've learned from this enough to where if I do let you into my life, it's because I've done the work of knowing what a genuine apology looks like. And I've made sure that you're actually sorry and willing to do the integration work and the work to change to make sure that this never happens again. Which again opens up a whole other conversation of what that criteria fucking looks like in the first place. And so for me, the only apology that I'm willing to accept that will actually allow that person back into my life is a deep examination and integration of whatever had them fuck me in the first place, right? Like if you got something inside of you that makes you not hold to boundaries and not hold to agreements, we both need to understand what the fuck that is in very clear terms, and I need to know exactly what steps you're taking to remedy the fact that you have a blind spot that is clearly more powerful than your connection to your boundaries, your connection to your integrity, and your connection to your honor. That needs to be fucking rectified first before I'm even willing to entertain the idea of letting you back into my life. And so that is tricky to do. In order to do that, you need to hold standards for yourself of what that actually looks like. And the way I've discovered to hold these kind of standards is to be that type of person myself. Like, I got these standards because I did something that could have... I came dangerously close to fucking a friend over recently. Dangerously close. And it freaked me out so much that I immediately examined whatever had me like walk up to this line of potentially fucking over a friend and be like, what was more important to me than my values in that moment? What need was that trying to get met? What's the best way to meet that need so that this thing that I'm dedicated to never gets compromised ever again? And I did the work of making sure that that thing is fucking solid. And because I did that work, I was able to identify pretty clearly what would be required for the other person to meet me at the level that I'm willing to play at, so that I can know that it's like, okay, this person's up to my standards, this person's worthy of my trust, they're doing the work to understand that even if they did break it, that there's work to be done to rebuild it, and that work must be done on an integrative level if I'm to trust it. Because here's the thing about it. If somebody just changes their behavior, it's very fucking possible that they're just doing that because they feel bad and they want you to forgive them and get back into their life so they can go back to just like not giving a shit again. And if they're doing it for you to make you feel good about them again, it's temporary and shallow at best. The work has to be done on their part. They have to be saying that the way I acted was so out of alignment with who I am and who I choose to be and who I want to be and who I see myself as that it's fucking alarming And I'm willing to do anything and everything required to make sure that this never happens again, because it's a complete affront to everything that I stand for. Like, it should be because they're so fucked up over what they did that they need to change more than it is. It's like, oh my God, I need to get this person back on my good grace, or I need to get back on this person's good graces so that I can feel better about myself again. Like, that simply is not a sustainable solution to dealing with this sort of thing. Because next time shit hits the fan, their value system still has a gaping hole in it that'll just have them act the exact same way they did before. That hole in the value system needs to be repaired. And my own personal standard is that the only thing that will repair that hole in the defenses enough to where I feel good about trusting them again is a deep and fundamental integration of what caused the blind spot in the first place. So that's just me. I have notes here that I'm reading in between. So one other thing. In order to really integrate this and to be able to forgive and move past, you need to have a valid understanding of the parts of yourself that are sneaky. This is building on my previous point, but you need to have an understanding of the parts of yourself that are sneaky and that would likely have you to act outside of your values and your integrity and your honor and that sort of stuff. Because if you don't know the sneaky parts in yourself, you likely won't see the sneaky parts in other people coming. You won't see them clearly. And so you'll be kind of defenseless against them. And so that's an essential part of making sure that this never happens in the first place, as well as making sure that a person has actually addressed them. You need to know about the dark side of humanity if you're going to protect yourself against it, and if you're going to make sure that the other person is addressing it, and if you're going to see it coming when it's trying to come. That's really important to know. Okay, so the last question. In order to make sure that this stays a lasting transformation, is you have to be really fucking honest with yourself if you're attempting to forgive someone and allow them back into your life. You have to be really fucking honest with yourself, and that is any part of me willing to sacrifice my values and my boundaries and what I know to be true for me for the sake of safety. Because when we allow shitty people into our lives, even though we know they're shitty people that we really shouldn't be trusting and they're likely to walk on our hearts, most of the time we're doing that because, hey, it's better than nothing. Having somebody shitty in my life is better than not having anybody, so fuck it. Maybe if I don't let this person in, I might not get someone better to replace them, so I'll just do with what I got. And that is what happens 9 times out of the 10 when people let themselves get back into these things. And so the real fundamental question you have to be asking yourself is my peace, is my well-being, is my sense of self, is my self-respect, is my boundaries, is the future relationships I'll get into, and my ability to trust and respect myself, is that more important to me than the comfort of having somebody in my life who isn't good for me? And it seems like that's a really on-the-nose question, but it can actually be a very difficult fucking question to ask. And so if you're in this type of situation where you're trying to repair these things, I highly, highly, highly recommend being really fucking honest with yourself, because this is where your blind spots are likely to hide out. These are the parts of your personality that are likely to sell you out in exchange for comfort. And you cannot underestimate the mind's ability and desire to find comfort over sanity. We are so wired for comfort over sanity. It's unbelievable. So you have to constantly be checking yourself. In a situation as sensitive to this, am I giving up my sanity and my wholeness for the sake of comfort? If you can be really honest with yourself, then you can bet you're on the path to having more lasting and sustaining comfort and peace than you've ever had. Because you just never get that much peace and that much comfort with somebody who you constantly have to be on guard from. But when you've done the work of making sure that your boundaries are really solid and really stable, and you're able to see fuckery coming, and you're able to deal with it as it arises, and you're able to better protect yourself from it when you do get caught off guard by it, like that allows for a lasting and sustainable kind of peace that's earned over time through watching yourself and watching your friends behave in ways that you know are safe and not constantly having that your peace disrupted. Like it's a pathway to much more peace than you'll ever know if you're willing to sit through the discomfort of having to deal with whatever got you where you are in the first place. So I didn't intend for this video to be this long, but I do think that it's an important topic to talk about at length and in detail. So I hope I've covered everything. I do teach this stuff professionally, so if you're needing help integrating an experience like this, because here's the thing, if you don't see this all the way through to the end, you will have a hard time trusting people that actually deserve your trust. If you don't dig all the way through underneath the emotions and actually integrate them on a fundamental level, there'll always be a wound that's coloring your perception of everyone else. And you'll see danger where there isn't really danger. And you might see comfort where there really isn't comfort. And it'll just skew your view because you're not looking at things clearly. But when you're able to dig through all the pain and integrate it and look at things calmly and clearly with an intelligent mind, knowing that there are dangers to look out for, but also being fair and knowing who's trustworthy and who isn't, like that's when things get really good. So you have to get all the way through so that you don't repeat the pattern and so that you don't close yourself off unnecessarily. So if you're dealing with this, if you've ever dealt with something like this and it's kind of fucking up your perception, it's making it difficult for you to connect with people, let me know. I want to help. I want to be there for you, and I can help you through this. So that's all I have on the topic for today. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns or if I didn't really explain anything super well. I love you, and I'll see you next time.